Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is J.R. Moore coming to you live from deep in the mountains of the Missouri Ozarks on Friday, 6th day of October, year of our Lord 2017. And welcome to the John Moore Show. The purpose tip of the day, I want to encourage all of you, if you don't have a team, to move forward, recruit, organize, equip, and train your team. If you do have a team, you need to make sure that your team has got the skills that they should have, that they have the organization, training, and equipment that they should have. That's your proper tip of the day. We have patient waiting in the green room, my friend Tom Berryhill. Tom is a very experienced ham radio operator, now starting his second half century of being a ham radio operator, and a gentleman who will help us gain more clarity, more knowledge, more focus as to why we should have emergency communications equipment, what kind we should get, and how to properly use it. Good morning, Tom.
Hi, John. Good morning.
Tom, everybody's obviously aware, unless they've been in a cave for the past 7 days, of what happened in Las Vegas late Sunday night. And I want to talk about how a group of 2, 4, 6, or 8 friends and family at an event, how they can stay in touch, which there doesn't have to be a mass shooting to have reasons for staying in touch, such as keeping track of children. It doesn't have to be a mass shooting, does it, sir?
No, John, it doesn't have to be. And we can certainly talk about the types of equipment that can be used in those situations.
Okay, well, let's do that. It could be a family outing to a shopping mall, to a sporting event, to a park. There's a state fair, for example. I've been to these state fairs. They're basically organized chaos. You ever been to a big state fair, Tom?
Yes, in Sedalia, yes.
Right. A lot of chaotic activity, thousands of people moving hither and thither. And so mom and dad, and they've got, let's say, 4 children, maybe 2 children and 2 friends of their children. They're going to the state fair. First of all, we need to know what kind of equipment and what kind of range. I would say any kind of radio that would be good for a mile would probably be sufficient, wouldn't it?
Yes, that's true, John. And my choice of radio equipment for short-range local use would be UHF HTs.
UHF.
UHF band.
Ultra high frequency. HT means handy-talkie. Within the ham radio culture, we don't call them walkie-talkies. We call them handy-talkies, don't we?
Yes, and I call them both because many people, they don't know what a HT or handy-talkie is. Handy-talkie is actually a Motorola trade name.
It is.
It's a registered trademark, I believe, yes. And I believe walkie-talkie was as well. It may have been Motorola that even trademarked walkie-talkie in World War II.
Was that World War II or the Korean War when that came about? I wasn't sure.
John, I don't remember exactly, but somebody could look that up, but I'm pretty certain that walkie-talkie originated from Motorola, and I know that handy-talkie was one of their trade names for their portable radios.
Well, those Korean War, World War II, Korean War vintage walkie-talkies were still in use in Vietnam. Heavy, not much range, ate up batteries like gangbusters, but it was better than nothing, wasn't it?
Yes, there were some units that actually transmitted transmit or receive, and I don't remember all the details, but a very low frequency right above the AM broadcast band, and then it may have been the transmit section that transmitted on a higher frequency, or maybe around between 30 and 50 megahertz. You know, that same setup was used in the early cordless telephones. I don't know if you knew that, John, but the early cordless phones, you'd see the extended antenna. People would go to answer the phone. They pull out that antenna. They were transmitting back to the base station, the telephone base station, on 49 megahertz, but they were listening on it was around 1.7 megahertz. In fact, that is part of the broadcast band today, because the broadcast band used to end at 1.6 megahertz, and it was extended to 1.7, so just right above that. And that's how they worked. It's not a very good system. There's actually people still using those to this day. Some of those are still in use.
Right. Well, let's get back to the state fair scenario. You're a proponent of ultra high frequency UHF, which would be ham radio equipment, wouldn't it? Would it not?
Yes, that's correct. Really, you could use either, and many of the HTs that are used by the ham operators are dual band. They have VHF and UHF, so they cover 144 to 148 megahertz, and then on the UHF side they'll cover. There's a mix. Some of them go down to the low as 420, which is the low end of the UHF band, all the way up to 450 megahertz, with most of them covering around 430 to 450. So there's 20 megahertz of spectrum that can be used. Now, there's a lot of repeaters in those ranges, but what I have always done personally, and I have you could almost call it a fleet of those types of radios, John. I keep them in chargers all the time. They're real handy if you're traveling and there's several cars in a caravan, and you can hand everybody one of these radios. And they can also be set up with a remote microphone. So you could lay the radio in a seat and just use a little microphone. You don't have to be picking up that portable radio all the time. And then you can also get adapters that allow them to be plugged into the cigarette lighter in the car, and that allows you to power it and not worry about the battery running down.
Right. Now, what license would a person need a license to operate that equipment?
Well, yes, you do need a license, and there are ways to put those on the. Now, none of this is actually legal, John, but you can put those radios on the GMRS, which is a general mobile radio service, and the family radio service, FRS, which operates around 460 megahertz. You can put those radios up into that frequency spectrum on those channels, and that would be the same as what you see when you go to any store and you see the little bubble-packed walkie-talkies, and they're typically made by Motorola, Midland, and many others. You could actually talk to those units, so your ham unit could be moved to those frequencies. That's why I like the Motorola units, by the way. They cover a very broad spectrum. You can put them in the ham radio bands. You can also move them up to GMRS. Typically, there'll be other ham operators, so there's no issue. But to hand them out to family members, not legal. Unless they do have a ham radio license, they would need at least a technician license to do this.
Now, I got a question.
The entry level.
The GMRS and FRS are unlicensed radios. What would make it illegal to program this HT on those frequencies?
Type acceptance. If the FCC wanted to really get sticky on the subject, they could push that issue. It's called type acceptance. The radio equipment has not been accepted for that service. Plus, those Motorola HTs will typically operate at much higher power levels than are allowed. The federal, the family radio service is relatively low power. I don't remember. It may only be 1 watt, maybe 2 watts at the most. I don't remember the exact level. And then the GMRS can operate at higher power levels, I believe as high as 50 watts. You can actually set up your own repeater.
Really?
Oh, yeah, you can operate repeater stations on GMRS, yes. And, John, out where we are in the rural areas, a lot of those frequencies are wide open. You get into the metropolitan areas, and many of those GMRS channels are all used up, and repeaters and lots of traffic on there. People in warehouses are using them, businesses. They're pretty popular. And by the way, I don't believe they fell under the narrowbanding rule. It came in January of 2013, where all the radio equipment had to start operating on narrowband systems, much lower modulation levels, and the channels were squeezed together to get more effective use allowed
right. Well,
spectrum.
The downside of that ruling was police, fire, and paramedics all had to sell perfectly good equipment at not or give it away because nobody wanted to buy it anymore. The upside is tens of thousands of excellent quality radios for sale on eBay that people can get their hands on, right?
Yes, a lot of that happened, and John, I around it was this time of year in the late fall of 2001. I actually purchased an entire fleet of radios from a trucking company that was closing down, and I bought them at a very low price and sold them at a very high price, and I made quite a bit off of that. It was a very good deal. I still actually have a few of those radios left over. I don't think they're worth $20 nowadays. Nobody wants them because they are not narrowband approved.
Right.
But they're very good. They're Motorola Ameritrac. They're 100 watts, 99 channels, and these were on VHF. They're very, very nice radios. One of the best that Motorola ever made. So I did hold back a few that were like brand new for my own use. The problem with using the commercial equipment, you're right in saying that so much of this ended up on eBay and in the used market, and the ham operators snapped it up because they're really top-notch pieces of equipment to put into service for amateur radio use. The hard part about it is getting them programmed. You either have to take it to a Motorola service shop and have them set channels, or you better have the programming equipment and the skills to do it. It can get kind of expensive if you have to buy a different programming adapter for each one of those models of radios.
Right. Well, getting back to the state fair scenario, mom and dad, a couple of teenagers, maybe one or two kids who are sub-teens. We probably, depending on the sub-teen, we probably wouldn't issue a radio to a 10 or 11-year-old, although we could, depending on the level of maturity, right?
That's correct. And for instance, now the UHF type radio, if you do put the small antenna on there, it's only a couple of inches long, and it works quite well, and it would cover an entire fairground and then some. So the range might only be maybe a half mile to a mile radius, but you could easily accomplish that with those short antennas in a fairground setting. It would be very, very reliable. Right.
And I would also, I would probably want, if I was doing it myself, I'd want a speaker mic so I can leave the radio attached to my belt and just have the speaker mic handy to talk and listen, or maybe even a earphone mic where I had a earplug stuck in one ear and a microphone not far below it with a push-to-talk button. It would be very discreet and very handy, wouldn't it?
Yes, it would. And another thing about some of the Motorola HTs, you can program them without these programming adapters. Some of these units allow you to program from the keypad on the front panel, and it also becomes a touch tone, like a telephone dial. You can use it for signaling purposes. Some of these radios actually had what's called DTMF decoders, which is a touch tone decoder. So you could put codes in a radio, and you could actually page a particular unit. If you only wanted to talk to one person, you could just punch their code in. And all these radios would have that capability if you have the decoder. Some of them came with it. Some of them didn't have that. Some was an option that had to be connected. But it is possible to do this, and that makes a very, very handy
well, every team, whether it's a family team or a church-based team or neighbors, they should have one person who takes it upon themselves to become the team expert in radio communications. And there has to be standardization before anything's bought, especially with the handy-talkies. Standardization for the following reason: compatibility of batteries, microphones, accessories, holsters, chargers. You're actually, if you're doing it right, you should be buying a system of radios. Otherwise, you end up with 2, 3, or more different types of radios that use different batteries, different chargers, different holsters, different speaker mics, which becomes a logistical nightmare, doesn't it, Tom?
That's correct. That's very true, John. The best situation, like you said, is to have somebody that understands how to set these up, and they program and set up all the radios, and everybody can be issued a unit, and you can give unit numbers if you want, or call signs, whatever they're doing will work fine. And again, I like the UHF because, it gives you a lot of frequency spectrum to use. The VHF channels are more crowded. There might be other people on there. They're actually way more popular. But for instance, at a state fair, you would almost have the channel to yourself. There most likely would be nobody else on that frequency. And you can also program in a subaudible tone, which is it's usually called private line or quiet channel, and all that is a very low-level tone that operates in the background that the radio will respond to. If there's somebody on that frequency talking and they don't have the proper tone or no tone at all, your radio just stays muted. You don't hear anything until another unit on that same tone frequency comes on the channel and starts transmitting. Then all the units will unsquelch and actually pick up that signal, so you can listen to that person.
That's very handy. We got a caller on hold here. We got John in Tennessee. Good morning, John.
Hey, John, I appreciate you taking my call. It's been a while. I've got something I think is pretty eye-opening to me. We know about 9/11. We know about 9/11/01. You know that false flags have been perpetrated in the past, Gulf Tonkin, etc. I came across something this morning. Someone forwarded to me from Twitter. I think you might be interested in this festival in Vegas. Was a Route 91 Harvest Fest that occurred in the 10th month on the first day. If you line those numbers up, you've got 911001 or 9/11/01. I think this is in your face, John.
How about that? We'll follow up on that after the break. Everybody stay tuned. We'll be right back. Ladies and gentlemen, J.R. Moore here. It's taken 3 years before I could offer the inter-shelter domes for sale. During those 3 years, several different governments and militaries were taking all their production. The inter-shelter dome homes may be just what you've been looking for to provide affordable, energy-efficient, permanent, and attractive housing. These dome homes are prefabricated units that can be assembled in a few hours by 2 men with a ladder and simple hand tools. Check out the photos of these dome homes built in the Arctic, on tropical beaches, in suburban areas, and in forests. All the details, many photographs, and the pricing of the dome homes are listed on the left-hand side of my homepage at thelibertyman.com. I think you'll find these homes are not only attractive, but they're energy efficient, and a bonus. You can disassemble them and reassemble them as many times as you feel you need to. Pretty great, huh? Something that's very, very unique. Check them out at my website at thelibertyman. All right, we are back with John. We're back. J.R. Moore here on Friday, the 6th day of October. John, I know, but can you tell me why September 11th is so important to Muslims?
Well, to be truthful, I've got a friend that is into the Muslim holidays. I'm more. I haven't kept track of a lot of it, so you tell me.
Well, it's not a holiday. It's not a holiday. On the 11th day of September...
Oh, it's the birth of Christ, I believe.
On the 11th day of September, the combined Christian armies in Europe stopped the Muslim invasion of Europe in Vienna, Austria. That's why it's so important.
I also believe that September 11th, I believe to be the birthday of Christ. that's just me. Anyway, I've listened to hours of Police Scanner, live time. I'm not talking about operations. I'm talking about the police on the ground in the venue. And every cop, Tom or John was saying, multiple shooters, 4th, 29th, 32nd floor, Mandalay Bay. Don't go to the east side of the building. You will be pinned down, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And
right.
The crazy part about all of this is that October the 1st, John, is a high holy day in Satanism. It's called the Harvest of Souls. So the coincidentally, if that's a word, the coincidentally naming this festival for years, the Route 91 Harvest Festival, this has been in the works. These people were fenced in, the exits were blocked, the spotlights were turned from the stage to the crowd, and they were put under fire from either belt-fed, and really what sounded to me like a Gatling gun, almost like a crank weapon. They were human sacrifices, John. I know it sounds outrageous, but they had no way of getting out. And the lights were turned on them.
Well, there's a lot of things that need to be looked into. I agree. And as we move forward in these investigations, we'll learn more. Anything else right now, John?
Well, we may and we may not. Yeah, we may and we may not. I mean, I was 6 years old when Kennedy was killed, and we know, but we don't know. They haven't told us. The amazing thing is the police are so... Right. The LV Police Department is so upset. The cops are so upset. They want to know why they're being lied to. And the only conclusion of rational mind that's going to be called schizophrenic and paranoid and everything else can arrive at is that our government was involved in it, either an arms deal that had gone bad or a planned event for years, false flags were initiated to go to war with other countries. Now they're being turned on us to go to war against the American people under the guise of keeping them safe. We got to keep you safe.
Okay. We got to keep you safe.
So thank you for letting me get it out, but
okay.
Take care.
Thank you for the call, John. Call number is 800-313-9443. Tom, we got the bottom of the hour break here in just a couple of minutes, but I know last night we were leaving an athletic event with my daughter's family. We had 3 different vehicles, 4 adults, 2 children, and as we were leaving, my daughter called my wife on the phone and said, "Have you seen my daughter?" Which would be my granddaughter. And so my wife had to inform my daughter where the grandchild was, and that was just a moment of concern that was legitimate. A 11-year-old girl that was not accounted for. But if the cell phones hadn't been there, we would have been in a real pickle, wouldn't we, Tom?
That's true, John. And the problem with cell phones is if the authorities want to, they can shut that service level down to where only the police and maybe state and federal cell phones will work, or no cell phones will work at all, or they could jam the whole spectrum and none of it would work. That's where the HTs would be a lot more valuable.
Right. Well, they'll jam it for everybody but themselves. That's the plan. Here's our break. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
You are tuned in to the Republic Broadcasting Network. Visit our website by going to republicbroadcasting.org.
Ladies and gentlemen, J.R. Moore here. I've worked with men and women involved in the high-end shelters for years. With the Ozark Survival Homestead, you get things you don't get with the high-end shelters. You get a opportunity to be in the bunker, of course. You also get a home, a 60 by 90 lot. You get your storable food, your livestock, share, your garden, greenhouse share, your seed bank share. One person to have everything they need, right at $25,000. For a family of three, $37,000. You really need to check this out. It's very unique. At my website, you'll see the Ozark Survival Homesteads on the left side of my homepage. Go there, read that one page, fill out the form with your name, your email address, and your telephone number, and I will forward that to the guys and gals at the Ozark Survival Homesteads. Check it out. You'll be very glad you did. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, J.R. Moore here. We have a special promotion on my show from now until August. If you mail me a postcard, you may get the opportunity to buy an energy cleaner for $70 off retail. $200 of the purchase price goes to Republic Broadcasting. We have a drawing for this promotion every other Thursday. The details are at my website. Just click on the orange sticker on the right side of my homepage at thelibertyman.com. Thank you very much for listening, and hope you can get those postcards in. Have a great day. We are back, ladies and gentlemen. We're back. J.R. Moore here on Friday, the 6th of October. My website is thelibertyman.com. That's thelibertyman.com. You'll find interesting free downloads there, things that will inform you, educate you, possibly make you upset. There's certainly a lot there. Our project of locating images of continents with new coastlines continues to move forward. We're getting a new one posted here this week. It's supposed to be North America 100 million years ago, with basically the center part of the country underwater, which of course it was at one time. Fascinating project. If you find an image of a continent with new coastlines in a movie or TV show, get that image to me, and you get your choice of any of my 5 DVDs that I've prepared, and as a thank you. Of course, also at my website, there's energy cleaners for sale. Marvelous healing devices. We focus on arthritis pain, most likely help there. Joint pain, that'll help. Back pain, same thing, it'll help there. Not getting a great night's sleep, well, when you sleep is when you heal. It will help you get a great night's sleep. I use mine every night. Marvelous healing device, only $285, shipping included to American zip codes. Keep in mind, I offer a 30-day money-back guarantee. That's from me to you personally, a 30-day money-back guarantee. So check out the energy cleaner at my website. Be sure and check out the factory-made fitted mattress pads. You can order right off my website at thelibertyman.com using PayPal, the most secure way to make any payment online. And to keep in mind, if you need to spread out those dollar amount, PayPal now takes payments if you're a resident of the United States. MasterCard, Visa, checks can be sent to my address at thelibertyman.com. I have a toll-free order line 24 hours a day. Don't try to call me. You won't get me. Toll-free order line only, 800-592-9543. I say again, 800-592-9543. We're visiting with Tom Berryhill, and we're talking about emergency communications, or not necessarily emergency, but routine communications. And really, for Tom, for these communications devices to be effective, people do need to use them on a regular basis, or they will forget how to do it, won't they, sir?
That's true. They need to be familiar with these. And, John, one quick comment. John from Tennessee called in about this Las Vegas situation, and he was monitoring the police radio traffic, which I always find very interesting when there's a lot of commotion like this going on. What amazed me is that it was able to even be received. So much of this police radio equipment now has gone over to digital modulations. They call it P25 digital, and much of that is encrypted. And unless you have the proper codes and really know how to do it, you're not going to receive them. So it amazes me that they allowed that to be unencrypted. Usually SWAT teams and any kind of response like that in a critical situation, they'll encrypt that radio traffic.
Right. Well, There are some downsides to encryption. The main one I'm aware of, unless it's changed, is the encryption cuts down on how far you can transmit, doesn't it?
Well, it does. There's some signal-to-noise ratio problems, and then the intelligibility of the signal of the audio is not always that good. It is degraded somewhat, but many times they need the encryption for various reasons, and many of the police departments have gone to that on a regular basis. They just encrypt everything.
Right. Well, for the rest of us, encryption is really not an issue. There are ways that encryption can be used by private citizens, but encryption is illegal for ham radio usage, isn't it?
That's true. It's not allowed. There are many digital modulation methods that are used now, but it's easily received. And in fact, John, I have a receiver that I really like, and if somebody wants to purchase a scanner combined with a shortwave receiver of all modes, they ought to look into this. It's an AOR DR1. The company is AOR, and the model number is a DR1. I'm pretty sure that's the number. It's a very small unit, and it receives from 100 kilohertz, so below the AM broadcast band, through the AM broadcast band, all through the shortwave spectrum, and into the low band VHF, which is 30 to 50 megahertz, a 6-meter ham band, 50 to 54. The FM frequencies, 88 to 108, and then all the way up to 1 gigahertz. And it receives AM, FM narrowband, FM wideband. You would need the wideband setting if you wanted to listen to FM radio stations, and then the narrowband, of course, would be for the FM communications that we're talking about now with the HTs and mobile radios. And then it also will demodulate several of the digital modes that are used by Yaesu, and I think it even does the ICOM standard. And then it also decodes and will allow you to listen to the P25 traffic that a lot of the police radios use now. It's a very, very versatile.
Okay, let's. I know there's people listening, and we got their attention now. Let's give the make and model of this particular unit again, Tom, slowly.
It's an AOR, just the letters A, alpha, AOR, and then it's a DR, Delta Roger 1, DR1. And I hope I'm saying that right, John. I don't have the radio right in front of me, but I'm pretty sure that's the model number. They are not cheap. I paid almost $1,000 for one of these.
Right. And AOR is the manufacturer?
That's the manufacturer. It's a very small radio. I'd say it's about 7 inches wide, 1.5 inches tall on the front panel, and about maybe 8 inches deep front to back. Mm-hmm. And it's an excellent shortwave receiver. You want to listen to shortwave stations. It picks up single sideband. You can listen to all the ham operators. It operates on 12 volts. Comes with a transformer you plug in the wall to operate it. You can also hook it up to a battery pack. It's not the best radio to use for portable operation because it does draw a bit of current, so your batteries have to be pretty hefty. You're not going to run it on a tiny battery. But it has a headset jack. You can plug in headphones. And I'll tell you what, I bought this thing because of the P25, but I was really amazed at how well it does in shortwave. And I've used it to copy Morse code or CW transmissions on 40 meters. I just had a wire strung across the living room floor, and I actually copied a Japanese station. Now, this was about like 2 o'clock in the morning one night, and I heard a guy in the States. This was on Morse code, but he was talking with another ham operator in Japan, and I could hear the Japanese operator just barely. But this was on a piece of wire about 25 feet long laying on the living room floor. Now, if I had it connected to one of my outside antennas, I probably would have heard him much better. But just the fact that it could pick up that Japanese station, and they were most likely running less than 100 watts all the way from Japan, that was very impressive. And it works quite well on the VHF channels and all that. So that's if somebody wants to spend that kind of money, that's an excellent receiver to have for a hit-the-fan situation, because you're going to be able to listen nearly everything.
And that operates on 12 volts, obviously. Tom, we got a caller on hold here. We got Stephen in Iowa. Good morning, Stephen.
Yes, I have a question about soft mounting radio equipment in the back of a vehicle. Do either of you have any experience in that regard?
I didn't hear the whole question, John. What about the back of the...
What kind of mounting?
It's called soft mounting. It's a carryover from heavy recoiling Mod-Deuce machine guns and other weapons.
Soft mounting of radios, you say?
Yes, that way road vibration won't knock them loose and do damage to them.
Well, much of the Motorola and General Electric, RCA, those were the heavy hitters in the land mobile industry for many, many years. Almost all of those radios were trunk mount. The radio equipment mounted in the trunk with a large cable that came up to the front of the vehicle where the control head would be attached, and the microphone would plug into that. So you see in the police cars that control box under the dash. That's not the whole radio.
Tom, stop. That's not his question. He's talking about a mount that would insulate the radio from the road vibration. Soft, Sierra Oscar.
Well, shock mount. Shock mount.
Shock mount.
They had some of that. I don't believe the radios need it. They're pretty rugged.
Okay, I do appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Right. Now, before we had solid-state electronics and radios were running with vacuum tubes, we're looking at basically 60 years ago, then that would have been an issue, wouldn't it?
Sometimes, but even then, John, in the 50s, the Motorola and General Electric units were bolted right in the trunk. They were huge. I mean, really big units, but they were bolted right in. I do know some of the World War II and probably Korean War equipment. Some of that carried over to the Korean War. Some of the transmitter and receiver units that were used in Jeeps and vehicles, they were shock mounted. They had like rubber shock absorbers that were bolted to the back end of the Jeep, and then the radio equipment was bolted to a plate that was attached to those shock mounts. So yes, but the trunk mount equipment is typically just bolted right to the trunk floor or a shelf on the side, and it's there's no shock mounting at all, and it's really not required.
Right. Yeah, I've seen the older mil-spec radios that had rubber shock mounts on them, where they were bolted to the truck. That was pretty common for that type of equipment many, many decades ago. But
and a lot of the aircraft radios had that too.
Yeah, I was looking at some World War II aircraft just yesterday, and they had that kind of mounts. Well, it's good to know that that's no longer necessary. The main thing is that it be good and solid so it doesn't bounce around and get damaged from coming loose, right, Tom?
Well, that's true. That's true. But, going back to when they had tubes in the radios, some of those tubes were rather sensitive, and I would suspect that was the reason for the shock mounting for the early tube equipment. But even as that equipment evolved into better tubes and better construction, they really never used shock mount. There could have been maybe special circumstances where it was required, but typically it wasn't used.
Right. Well, people need to pay heed to what we're talking about so that when they do have that event, what could be a state fair, a sporting event, a concert, a trip to Disney World, that they have the equipment, that they know how to use it, and that it will be used. Right, Tom?
Yes, that's correct. And, John, we really need to talk about these little inexpensive Chinese radios. I think they're junk. They do work, but they don't work the best. They have too many functions. When I see an HT that has a flashlight built into it, I really start wondering if the thing does any of it any good at all. I did test one of these Baofeng, I think that's how you pronounce it, I tested one. I put it on a service monitor. That's a piece of test equipment that's used to calibrate and adjust and test these radios. And it did. It was relatively sensitive to receiver. It did put out the proper power. But I'll tell you what, the transmit signal was not very clean. So, looking at the transmitted signal, the frequency spectrum on each side of that channel that radio was on was kind of dirty. The noise, the FCC has specific requirements for that to get these pieces of equipment type accepted. The harmonic content and the noise and everything that's not on the channel that you're on has to be well suppressed. And the radio I tested, it would have never passed type acceptance. So the FCC would have never allowed it. I don't think those are type accepted. I doubt if they are, but boy, they import those by the truckload, and everybody runs around. I see a lot of the ham guys using them. I find that they're rather difficult. They have so many different functions. It would take you a while to figure out how to program that thing. Now, some people will think they're simple, but you get the stress of a bad situation. If you haven't thought that all out in advance, you're going to be scratching your head for a while trying to figure that thing out. The Motorola type of equipment that I like to use can be programmed from the front panel and then locked down. So you can lock it, and it can have multiple channels or fixed onto one channel only, but the operator can't really mess with it. They have to know the access code to get in there and change any of those settings. So it's pretty handy.
There's a couple of terms that this brings to mind. They're both similar: cop-proof and GI-proof, which means simple, doesn't it, Tom?
Yes, that's very true. I could tell you stories, John, about some of the cops I knew in the past that would. I always remember the one guy who was hitting me up all the time. He says, "Hey, can you put that detective channel in my HT?" And I said, "Well, if you're not supposed to be on there. The detectives have their own channel." He said, "Yeah, but I really need to. I don't want to talk to him. I just want to listen." And I said, "You get me a letter addressed to me from the chief of police or signed by the police commissioners that allow me to do that, and I'll put it in there for you." And he never could get that accomplished, but that guy he was wanting to throw money at me and everything else. I just wouldn't do it. But cops, yeah, they always wanted to tinker with that equipment.
Right. Well, that's not wise to do without proper authority, right, Tom?
That's correct. You don't tinker with their equipment. Let them do it if they want to try. But I wouldn't ever touch that stuff. Well,
the downside is pretty great because you're talking about human life being at risk if something gets screwed up.
Yes, that's very true. Public safety equipment, you don't want to tinker with that unless you're a regular radio shop and you're properly insured for it and everything else. I was in the past, John, but I don't really work on that type of equipment anymore. I keep my own personal radio equipment running, and for friends and acquaintances, I'll do things like that, but I don't really work on too many commercial systems anymore. Right.
Well, if there's people that do that, and I'm friends with several. Here's our next break. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. We are back, ladies and gentlemen. We're back here on Friday, the 6th of October, visiting with Tom Berryhill. Tom, we got another caller on hold here. We got Dean in West Virginia. Good morning, Dean.
Good morning.
Go ahead,
down
here.
Yes.
Go ahead, sir.
Yes. I would like to know what would be the best frequencies to use vertical or horizontal transmission, AM or FM or whatever, during a nuclear conflict, and then also the ones when you have to put up with the sky shine from the radiations that's on the ground. What would be the best ones after the conflict?
Well, in my opinion, maybe some of all of it. All of it could be useful. Now, after a lights-out event like that, you should really consider the HF equipment. That's my favorite because you'll have regional communications without any infrastructure. The infrastructure is right there, the equipment that you have on the ground. That is the whole system. And anybody you're communicating with will have the same situation at their end. Their equipment is the infrastructure. There's no repeaters, there's no landlines, there's no microwave links, there's no satellites, there's nothing in between. And it will give you a wide area coverage, and that's what the military and the government people will be using after an event like that. They would be doing the same thing to communicate over regional or even a very wide area. But typically, you could cover a local city, the entire city. You could also cover really several states, day or night. And you'd have to. Now, that takes some skills if you're going to operate HF equipment. But the two most popular frequency bands for ham radio use would be the 40 meter and the 75 meter ham radio bands. That would be around 7 megahertz and then 3.5 to 4 megahertz. The lower frequencies are typically used at night, although they can be used during the day. Their range is not as great during the day on the 80 meter band, 80 and 75 meters, which is 3.5 to 4. The 40 meter band works pretty good day and night. You can operate and talk hundreds of miles during the day on the 40 meter band. That would be very useful. And for close-in work, you would, of course, want HTs or the VHF and UHF mobile units. Dual-band mobile units are quite popular. As much power as you can have, I would say a minimum of 25 watts, but typically these radios can operate as high as 75 and 100 watts. There's quite a few radios out there that are dual-band VHF, UHF that operate at 50 watts, and that, along with an antenna mounted on a car or truck, you can have some pretty good range. I mean, it's not going to be anywhere as near the range that a HF system would give you, but it would operate very good with.
And if you know nuke attacks coming, disconnect everything, put it in the Faraday cage.
That's very
gentlemen,
true.
We're out of time. Dean, thank you. Tom, thank you, sir. We'll be talking privately.
Thank you, John.
Okay, top of the hour break. We'll be back with Dr. Phil Myers. Stay tuned. J.R. Moore here, our second hour on Friday, the 6th of October. Proper tip of the day. If you have a team, I want you to make sure they're organized, trained, and properly equipped. If you don't have a team, you need to recruit your team. This would be a team to deal with any kind of crisis you might imagine. Recruit, organize, train, and equip your team. That's your proper tip of the day. We're patient in the green room, my friend, Dr. Phil Myers, D.C. Dr. Myers is a chiropractic physician living and working in my hometown, St. Louis, Missouri. If you want to get started with Dr. Myers and gain access to the expertise and knowledge that he has, real simple. Call his office, get that first private no-charge consultation. That office telephone number is area code 314-878-6868. Good morning, doctor.
Morning, John. How's everything going this morning?
No complaints, sir. How about yourself?
Oh, doing very well myself. Thank you very much.
Outstanding. Well, of course, the big news all week has been the tragedy in Las Vegas, and I want to talk just a few moments about people dealing with tragedy, dealing with trauma, and it doesn't have to be as extreme as Las Vegas. It could be the death of a family member, a friend or family member who's been seriously injured. Let's talk a little bit about stress and the proper way to deal with stress, sir.
Yeah, no problem. I mean, so when you're talking about, let's talk about the event that happened in Las Vegas. It brings up a lot of emotional stresses. And even in the sight of, let's say, for example, you had in your past a physical trauma. Let's just say that you were unexpectedly injured in a car accident or unexpectedly injured in a sporting event or anything like that. Then you see or hear about the events going on in places like Las Vegas, and you see the unexpected injuries and deaths that happened there. Even though you experience a physical trauma, maybe you blew out your knee or had a whiplash or something like that, the emotion that is still locked in within yourself gets triggered or can majorly get triggered emotionally when you see the same type of context happened to you, an unexpected event causing great harm. And so it can lead us collectively in a lot of states of anger. I mean, look at it. I mean, it's creating a lot. There's a lot of anger around this. There's a lot of sadness around this. There's a lot of resentments going on this. People are all trying to figure it out. If I could just figure this out, if this would just make sense, then whatever can start happening for me. All those emotions that were maybe dormant within you, or at least rounded up, and at least in their cages, and you didn't, and they're in their different positions, and you know you had them under control. But then this happens, and whoom, they're all up in your face, and you're sad, mad, and depressed, and you can't figure out why you're not able to get out of this funk. Those are what we call reactive tissue issues, or recalling an old injury. And in all reality, a lot of us then are responding in almost like a post-traumatic type of way.
Right. So let's get down to specifics here. We experienced this trauma, and we're living it. We go to bed with anxiety, do not have a good night's sleep, wake up with anxiety. It's affecting our mental health, our emotional health, our physical health. What would be a proper response? What should people be doing, Doctor?
Well, you don't even have to, this wouldn't even be a mental exercise you'd have to do. This is something physical you can literally do for yourself. And I'll go over the mechanics on why. When you get stuck in that trauma-drama response, your glandular tissues are mostly being triggered by adrenaline and cortisol, which means that they eventually start losing their energy. Well, one of the biggest ones that deals with this type of trauma-drama is the thymus gland. The thymus gland sits right where your throat and your sternum meet, so that's a little real soft point in your throat. Underneath that, behind the big bone in front, is your thymus gland. There's also an acupuncture point right to the left and the right of that called kidney 27. Kidney 27 and the thymus glands, when stimulated, will help reverse the polarity of that energy field in those glands that were reacting to cortisol and reacting to adrenaline based on the trauma-drama that you're now reacting in your own system. It's literally reacting, but it's also reenacting the event. So it's as if your body is physically, biochemically, emotionally, even spiritually playing out the scene within your whole biochemistry. Stimulating that thymus gland and stimulating kidney 27 on each side of the thymus gland. And they're really tender. You all feel them right now and kind of rub them. It's like, okay, that's tender. It's because that glandular system has been activated in what we call the reverse polarity system of optimal health. So by stimulating it, you can literally reverse the polarity and support your bodies in the ability to let go of the reenactment of the trauma drama that is going on with your system. And then you can then see events like Las Vegas and other places like that, and literally be in compassion, be in love for all the players. And that's the thing. It's like, well, I'll have compassion for the victims, but forget that guy. Or
right.
I'll love and support those people, but these people over there, they're the reason. And you
can't fool your subconscious, can you, Doctor?
No, you can't. Thank you for iterating that. You can't fool the subconscious at all. It's an all or none type of system. Like, you can't be loving and hatred at the same time. It's literally impossible.
Right.
So that's a really good, simple, easy exercise that you only have to do it for 10, 15, 30 seconds. And then you'll feel the change. But what you'll notice, and it doesn't stop, like, for example, the negative thought patterns that are going on in your head. It doesn't stop, quote unquote, the mind energy that you are really, 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 really holding on to.
Right.
What it does, though, is it at least helps break the circuit and gives your system that nanosecond of an impulse, which in meditation time can be a million years of time to literally sit and surrender. If you just gave your system that little nanosecond.
It doesn't take long, does it, Doctor?
Yeah, eventually, time is a state of mind, or what also people call mind is an illusion, is because it's a state of mind. Yes, there are seconds in the day, but I can tell you from just being an athlete and also being a healer that there'll be times I'll be working on somebody and literally so enveloped in the moment, so in a conversation or a feedback loop of consciousness with the person that I'm like, wow, we got so much done. This is such a great adjustment. And I'll look up at the clock, and only 5 minutes has gone by. We still got like 20, 25 minutes left. And it's like, it's astonishing, like how much you can see get accomplished when you stay in the moment of what's actually happening versus being ran by your emotions. And when I make this comment, I'm not downgrading Las Vegas. I'm not downgrading the Twin Towers. Like, which one was worse than the other? Yeah, they're the same. Tragic life was lost due to tragedy. Period. Doesn't matter if it was so and so that did this to that to Jane Doe or to Mary Who. It doesn't matter. It's the mere fact of all these events are going to happen continually in our lives. And they'll stop happening more and more as more and more of us start literally letting go of the hatred, the anger, the resentment, the judgment, the I'm right, you're wrong mentality. We have to let this go. If there's not something that this event is catapulting, is to literally pay attention to the time that we're living in. We're living in a time where we're all being told, let go of this anger. Let go of this resentment. Start letting go of it because it's not serving you. And every single time a tragedy happens, if you guys get caught in that level of consciousness, you're just going to end up a year from now saying, how did I end up here again? It's another person that did such and such, or another group that did such and such. And it's getting worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. And unless you start doing the work, you're just going to continue reenacting your anger, your resentment, your judgment, your fear because of what somebody else did. And then you looking at them as like, well, if they would just stop doing this, then I wouldn't be angry. I wouldn't have resentment. I wouldn't have this anger towards these people. If they would just stop doing this, well, that's just like, well, if I just won $1 million, then I'll be all happy. It's an illusion of time.
Well, there's a place for quiet, thoughtful, focused prayer here, isn't there, Doctor?
Oh, absolutely, and that's what it's all about. I mean, even last show, when we were talking about the masculine energy, but the other part of the show that we did is we gave you a really amazing tool of surrender, of listening to your breath, breathing with your breath, listening to your heart rhythm within the breath that you're taking. That right there is the more, it's not more or less, but it's just an add-on with that thymus pump that we just talked about. It makes that nanosecond 50 nanoseconds. And the more you train it, and the more you work on it, you're now at 100 nanoseconds and 200 nanoseconds. And what that does is it gives you that little more space of time to catch the emotion at its core and literally say, wow, you're totally living a story here. If they would just have done this, that, or the other, or if this person hadn't done this, that, then I wouldn't be feeling this. You get to catch it right there, just like catching a marlin in the sea. Yeah, you got it. And then, just like the old man in the sea, you'll wrestle with it. You'll exhaust it out, and you'll eventually pull it in. And sometimes, it's going to take great mental focus. It's going to take that warrior in you that is no longer needing to go grab his sword and put his armor on and get out in the battlefield and have the battle cry and run out and chop the other person's head off because evil person, if you're not on this planet, then our lives are going to be better. You get to take that energy that you've used for centuries and drive it into intense mental focus of surrender, of connectivity. Us men start doing that. Start practicing daily. Just 5 minutes. No rules here, just no biting. There's no rules. Just do it. and you'll start seeing the great results.
Well, as I say many times, Doctor, people listening to us are thinking about this and pondering and wondering, but thinking and wondering and pondering doesn't accomplish anything, does it, Doctor?
No, because guess what you're thinking, wondering, and pondering? You're thinking, wondering, and pondering your emotional body. The thoughts and the thought patterns that are connected to that storyline.
Hold that thought, Doctor. We have a break. Call number is 800-313-9443. We'll be right back. J.R. Moore here. It's taken 3 years before I could offer the inter-shelter domes for sale. During those 3 years, several different governments and militaries were taking all their production. The inter-shelter dome homes may be just what you've been looking for to provide affordable, energy-efficient, permanent, and attractive housing. These dome homes are prefabricated units that can be assembled in a few hours by 2 men with a ladder and simple hand tools. Check out the photos of these dome homes built in the Arctic, on tropical beaches, in suburban areas, and in forests. All the details, many photographs, and the pricing of the dome homes are listed on the left-hand side of my homepage at thelibertyman.com. I think you'll find these homes are not only attractive, but they're energy efficient, and a bonus. You can disassemble them and reassemble them as many times as you feel you need to. Pretty great, huh? Something that's very, very unique. Check them out at my website at thelibertyman.com. We are back, ladies and gentlemen. We're back. J.R. Moore here on Friday, the 6th of October. Quick reminder, this coming Tuesday, the 10th of October, I'll be speaking at the Johnstown Senior Center in Johnstown, Colorado. That'll be 7 p.m. Tuesday, the 10th. It'll be free and open to the public, 7 p.m. Look forward to seeing a lot of you there. We're visiting with Dr. Phil Myers, my personal physician, by the way. If you want to get started with Dr. Myers, here's all you need to do. Call his office. Set up that first private, no-charge consultation. That office telephone number is area code 314-878-6868. Let's continue, Doctor.
So, literally, it's all about learning to let go. And so, these events, it's like you can literally tell yourself, when all these events are over, then there'll be peace on earth. Well, okay, we'll be waiting a while. Peace on earth will always and only will start with you. And I kind of am calling more of a shout-out to the guys. It's kind of like a shout-out month to the guys. The girls are on top of it. They're already in the healthcare field. They're the ones at the yoga classes. They're the ones working on trying to bring more love and compassion in the world. Us guys, we're learning to get out of warrior mode, let go of the anger, the fear, the resentment, the judgment, and take on a different role as that masculine energy that the world's looking for. A huge teacher, great support network, knows that you're safe and secure, but you don't. But without the anger and the resentment and the judgment and the internal fear about not being good enough or whoever you're being around. It's going to take a lot of that mental focus for the men to start really, really, really taking this on. And here's the thing. If we don't, we're going to continue dying of heart attacks and dying of strokes way sooner than we should have, because the amount of anger and resentment and judgment and all that kind of stuff that's still within our bodies, that we still act out daily, is so literally tiring to our own self. And it's going to just cause so many arrhythmias and so many nervous system burnouts. That doesn't have to happen. You literally, as a person, need to start saying, I'm done with this energy. I don't need to feed off this anger, this judgment, that resentment. Having it and expecting the other person to die makes no sense.
Right. You're just hurting yourself is all you're doing.
You're just hurting yourself. And this isn't gloom and doom type of conversation. It's just a reality. Our emotional body is a beaker of chemistry. And is your beaker of chemistry full of light, or is it full of muck? And living in the anger, the judgment, the resentment, the I'm right, you're wrong, I'm superior, you're inferior, blah, 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 blah. And even in the whole aspect of you can take it into corporate and competition and all that kind of stuff. It's going to be funny. Eventually, you're going to start seeing win-wins within corporations and companies and managements. It's like everybody's going to start having more of this win-win versus winner-take-all system. It's going to start changing, and whether we are aware of it or not, it's actually happening right now. And so, but we're going to start becoming more aware and more noticeable of it real soon. Just like the Tesla cars, they're really expensive, and they're only like certain people are able to afford them right now. But eventually, it's just going to hit more and more and more and more and more of the mass public. It's going to become more affordable, and every car is going to be looking like a Tesla car in the future. It just took a period of time. But unlike this type of analogy, this type of work, it's not about how much money you have to buy the first thing on the market. Become the early adopters in surrender. Instead of, you don't have to be the early adopter in the Tesla car and spend the $100,000. You can still drive your $25,000 car, $30,000 car. That's no problem. But this type of energy, it's free. But be the first adopters in it and become the space where more and more and more and more and more people collectively are seeing it happening. And then, let the other people come along later. And they will, and they'll be awesome, just like when we make food. You don't throw all the ingredients all at once. You start sautéing the onions first, and then you add the paprika. But if you start sautéing the paprika and then add the onions, it wouldn't really work, would it?
Hardly.
So there's a rhyme and a reason and a synergy. And that's what it is. It's a synergy of everything coming together at the right moment in the right time. And to help you let go of the anger, judgment, resentment type of stuff, it's always the right time. So saying, well, it's not my time. It's always the right time. The right time is to start doing the work. How you fit into the equation when you get put into the pot, that's no one knows. But everybody got bought at the grocery store. Everybody was on the grocery list, and everybody ended up back at the house in the kitchen. And so it's like, well, I wanted to be cooked first. Well, maybe that's your thing. Maybe you're last. Maybe you're the garnish. You're the thing that really make everything look awesome and pretty and presentable so that people then want to actually eat the thing that was cooked first.
Right. Hold that thought, Doctor. We have Bob in the hour break. Call number is 800-313-9443. We'll be right back.
You are tuned in to the Republic Broadcasting Network. Visit our website by going to republicbroadcasting.org.
Gentlemen, J.R. Moore here. I've worked with men and women involved in the high-end shelters for years. With the Ozark Survival Homesteads, you get things you don't get with the high-end shelters. You get a opportunity to be in the bunker, of course. You also get a home, a 60 by 90 lot. You get your storable food, your livestock share, your garden, greenhouse share, your seed bank share. One person to have everything they need, right at $25,000. For a family of three, $37,000. You really need to check this out. It's very unique. At my website, you'll see the Ozark Survival Homesteads on the left side of my homepage. Go there, read that one page, fill out the form with your name, your email address, and your telephone number, and I will forward that to the guys and gals at the Ozark Survival Homesteads. Check it out. You'll be very glad you did. Thank you very much. All right, we are back, ladies and gentlemen. We're back. J.R. Moore here on Friday, the 6th of October. My website is thelibertyman.com. Interesting free downloads there. One that's relevant to our discussion this morning. A book, the copyrights law inspired, titled The Power of Your Subconscious Mind by Dr. Joseph Murphy. This is a great book. I read my copy once a year at least. It's got tabs, it's got highlighting. It's a great book to help you achieve the clarity, gain the focus that you need to achieve any goal that you want to achieve. It's a great book, and I think you'll find it very helpful for living your life the way you want to live it. Also, my website, of course, is a marvelous healing product that I use every night. I incorporate this with what I do with Dr. Myers, a healing product called the Energy Cleaner. It goes to every cell in your body, flushing out toxins, bringing in fresh nutrition. That's how it works. You can study up on it at my website. If you have arthritis pain or joint pain or back pain, it will most likely help. Not getting a great night's sleep probably help there also. It's only $285, shipping included. As health-related matters goes, this is quite a bargain. Keep in mind, I offer a 30-day money-back guarantee on the Energy Cleaner. Be sure and check out the factory-made fitted mattress pads. I'm the guy, if you place your order, I'm the guy that boxes them up and ships them. Every time I sit one on the counter at the Little Country Post Office in Cherryville, Missouri, I feel like I'm striking another blow for freedom to have another listener who's going to have more health and more energy to deal with what's coming at us. I take PayPal, the most secure way to make any payment online, MasterCard, Visa. Checks can be sent to my address at thelibertyman.com. Toll-free hour line, 24 hours a day. Here it is, 800-592-9543. I say again, 800-592-9543. Visiting with Dr. Phil Myers, D.C. If you have a question or comment, give us a call at 800-313-9443. To get started with Dr. Myers, call his office. Set up that first private no-charge consultation at 314-878-6868. Let's continue, Doctor.
So that makes a lot of sense to the people that are working at this. And it's very important to start really diving into this. And the cool part about this is, I mean, take it from my standpoint, the whole warrior thing. And I got into the healthcare field from strength and conditioning. Obviously, I was noticing that by moving weight and pushing things through and using gut fort effort and all that kind of stuff really transformed my body. But here's the thing that really was interesting. As I got quote-unquote stronger and more in shape, my low back issue never got technically better. I just had to make sure I was building up different areas of my body to make sure that they were quote-unquote stronger, but there was always that underlying weakness within my low back. And I was a chronic neck cracker, and I was always popping my neck to one particular side or the other. Even though I was getting stronger and I was able to run further and longer and jump higher and move this weight more and have longer time over weight abilities, all these kinds of stuff were happening. But what I was even into the whole thing of I'm able to. I understood what the word can't did to your physiology and all those different types of things. But what happened for me when I really stopped the belief that I had to continue being this warrior, that I had to save everything, that I had to be everything, to make sure that everything was protected, and that whole mindset, which is very prominent amongst the male population in some way, shape, or form. Might not that be exact story, but definitely fits the profile. Is I started noticing I was able to let go of a tremendous amount of stress, a tremendous amount of tension, a tremendous amount of held in behavioral patterns that continually made my back sore, that always made my right knee weak, that I was always cracking my neck on the right. My right shoulder was always reacting that football injury that I had when I was in high school. So all these different types of things started disappearing and disappearing and disappearing. And believe it or not, when it came to my strength conditioning protocols, I was getting stronger and not having to work as hard. I was becoming, my body was literally transforming before my eyes in terms of where I was holding bulk, muscle, and it was like, well, you don't have to hold on to this anymore. And it let go, and I became more flexible, more fluid, and way more agile to do the tasks at hand, where people now look at me when I'm doing all this work, whether it be any type of the healing modalities that I do, and they're like, wow, where is all this energy coming from? You got to be exhausted by the end of the day.
Right.
I'm like, well, I'm not using my muscles. And when people hear that, they're like, well, what do you mean you're not using your muscles? Because I'm not using that energy. I'm using my mind. And when you use your mind to surrender and let go, man, you can do it. Like that's what Bruce Lee was all about, that 1-inch punch. It was learning how to harness that energy right through your core. And he had, hard as a rock, but that man was so loose and so supple and so agile. It's that type of, and that was way back then. And
right. Well,
the maturity stage.
I had that demonstrated to me by a buddy, a fellow wrestler who was also a Golden Gloves boxer more than 50 years ago. And he challenged me to do what to hold my fist 6 inches from his stomach and punch as hard as I could. And I thought, well, this is not going to end well. But I accepted the challenge. I accepted the challenge, and I hit him as hard as he could, and he just smiled. And then he did the same to me and knocked me all the way across the room. It didn't hurt because I had a pretty stout stomach, but it was quite a demonstration of focused energy. We have a caller on hold here. We got Rick in Missouri. Good morning, Rick.
Good morning. Good morning, John. Good morning, Doc. Hey, I just had one comment, really, and it is with regard to, this subject. And it's interesting, and I guess, it's possible I'm reaching a bit, but John and I have some things in common aside from a blood type and an overall kind of a cop type look at the world. We also both go to Doc Myers, and the male energy thing is, I think, at least from my point of view, is a third rail for most guys. I mean, asking them to stop being badass in the room is you may as well neuter them. But I would say, two things, a couple things about it. One is that it is insanely tiring, and right. You're also putting off some vibes, whether you know it or not, that make friends and family uncomfortable. And a couple things happen, aside from the fact that you are turning into a woman when you agree to let go of this stuff. I'm kidding. Is that people see you differently, and you do have a lot more energy, but for most people to even broach this subject is just literally terrifying. What I wanted to say though was my wife gave me an article called "Rewiring Your Brain by Saying a Gratitude Rosary." Now, most people would have figured out already I'm Catholic, but what they don't know is that there is a huge segment of the Catholic Church that actually embraces contemplative prayer. It's not as popular in the U.S. as it is in other places, but I wanted to ask, I just wanted to confirm one thing. When you take 5 minutes out and you focus, breathe, and you do these things, it's going to start looking a lot like contemplative prayer, whatever that is. And you are literally rewiring your brain and opening yourself up to mental health, which, of course, is going to be directly linked to physical health. Am I moving in the right direction here?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, for example, contemplative prayer is contemplating. Well, the convolution of it all, the misconception, is contemplation. Like Einstein said, you can't solve a problem with the same energy field that created it. Well, a lot of people are contemplating with their anger, their fear, their judgment, right, their resentment, and all that kind of stuff. And so
very tiring.
Yeah, very. So contemplative prayer in its essence is all about feeling and noticing the emotion, getting into your focus center of feeling and surrendering the anger, surrendering the judgment, surrendering the suffering of it all.
Right.
And bringing your body from a Catholic standpoint, your mind to a Christ-like manner.
Well, and yet, you would think you're letting go of something good. You're letting go of something you're used to, which does not mean it's something good. You're just used to reacting to things in this weird way. You've come to believe it's okay, but it isn't actually optimal, not by any stretch.
No, we literally became addicted to the emotional chemistry. It's like, yeah, and then that's where the struggle comes from.
Right. Right.
That's where that struggle comes from.
Kind of, struggling with your own insanity and wearing yourself down. Well, that was kind of all I wanted to say. By the way, I'm really enjoying the show today, guys.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Rick.
We appreciate the call, Rick. If I can, I've said this before, but this is for the guys out there. Gentlemen, if you're looking to make this transition from being a warrior on full alert 24/7, don't feel threatened by this. Here's the analogy I use. If I'm a first-string offensive starter, which I was when I played football, if I'm on the sideline watching the kickoff return team do what they do, that doesn't make me any less of a warrior. What it does mean is I'm relaxed and still focused on what's going on, but I'm not in that tightly coiled mode waiting for the ball to be snapped. It doesn't make me any less of a warrior, though, does it, Doctor?
Absolutely not. And think of the people on the field. If they're working in their state of focus versus their state of in surrender versus their state of locked-in tension, you know that from a fact of being an athlete. You put yourself in locked-in tension, you're going to hurt yourself. You put yourself into surrender and flexibility and focus, you're gonna fly around and mosey on through and twist and turn, or however you need to do to get the job done.
That's right.
But there's way less tension. There's that adrenaline, that cortisol spike system that puts your heart into a rhythmic beat, that boils your blood, that can cause blood vessels to literally burst. These are just things that have come in this past 2 weeks from guy's standpoint, from guys' issues. It's just within these are everyday things that we're all dealing with. It might not be your story, but eventually it does happen.
It does. Here's our last break. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. All right, we are back, ladies and gentlemen. We're back. J.R. Moore here on Friday, the 6th day of October. Yes, we're visiting with Dr. Phil Myers. You're listening, you're thinking, you're pondering. Here's what you do. Give him a call. Set up that first private, no-charge consultation. His office telephone number is area code 314-878-6868. Doctor, you know me pretty well. You know that I've been in the warrior mode 24/7 for basically half a century, and we're working on changing that modality, aren't we, sir?
Absolutely. Doing a very good job at it, too.
And it's a good thing. It's a good thing, and it will help me long term. And we have a lot of men listening out there that are in the same situation. They're in the warrior mode, and they've been that way for all their adult life. We're not going to cause you any harm or anything that will be an issue for you, adverse issue. This will all be positive, won't it, Doctor?
It's literally about strengthening yourself, but strengthening yourself in a whole new way. You've just been so thinking that, wow, if I have to do it this way in order to be strong and masculine. Whereas when you let go of that old way and you start applying the work into your mind and also then in your mind into training your body, because that's the thing that most people kind of forget is you must train your body. I mean,
that's right.
Must. It's literally a must. But like I used to tell my runners back in the day, you can still be a runner, but stop running away from your life. Stop running in order to escape something or to beat something. Run for the sake of running that allows you to be expressive in a way, especially like towards your body, because when people like run or work out, it's like there's a kind of body image issue there, or look at it. And so looking at how you're treating your body, it's the same way. Believing that you can, loving every part of you. Yeah, your thighs might be a little big. Yeah, you might have a gut belly. Yeah, you might have saggy man boobs. But let's look at yourself as, okay, this is me, and I'm caring for me, and I'm supporting my growth and my ability in the highest and greatest degree that I possibly ever could and can, and I'm capable of doing. And so when you start applying it in that sense, you can go and bench press the 250-pound 5 times and leg press the 1,000-pound leg press on the sled machine. No problem. But it takes on a whole new definition, a whole new reason, and a whole new outlook on your mind and your body's performance in your everyday.
Doctor, that was a great place to end up the show. We appreciate it. Have you back next Friday.
You too, John. Bye.
Okay. That's it for the day. That's it for the week. Your medical supplies, your energy cleaner, your essential oils now while you can, your firearms ammunition. Never, ever give up your guns. Please do have a fun, safe, productive day and weekend. And God bless America.